Welcome to the Animal Wellness Podcast, all about improving the lives of animals with better policies and practices in government and business. Brought to you by Animal Wellness Action, where we believe helping animals helps us all. Here's your host, Joseph Grove.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm Joseph Grove. Today, we're tackling one of the most controversial and heartbreaking issues facing equines in the United States, the ongoing export and slaughter of American horses. Many of these animals spent their lives as companions, athletes, or working partners before being sent across our borders for human consumption in Canada and Mexico. Even though horse slaughter plants have not operated legally in the United States since 2007, tens of thousands of American horses and burros are still being trucked across the southern border annually to be killed for meat, often after long and stressful journeys and under conditions that raise significant welfare concerns. Animal welfare advocates, including Animal Wellness Action, have repeatedly called out this practice as a moral blind spot in our national animal protection policy. Congress routinely adopts language that prohibits domestic horse slaughter, but has thus far failed to pass legislation that would stop the live export of horses to slaughterhouses to our north and to our south, despite broad public support and bipartisan bills such as the SAFE Act currently circulating in both chambers of Congress. Our guest today is Thalia Fischer, founder and director of All Seated in a Barn, a California-based equine rescue that has become a beacon of hope for horses who might otherwise be swept into that export slaughter pipeline. Thalia's work spans rescue, rehabilitation, training, and public education, and her insights will help us understand both the realities on the ground and the bigger policy battles shaping the future of horse welfare in this country. Also on the show is Wayne Pacelle, president and founder of Animal Wellness Action, who has led many fights and is fighting today in Congress to help stop this pipeline. So I'll welcome them both. Thalia, Wayne, welcome to the show.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Joseph. Great to be with Thalia.
All right. Well, Thalia, let's start with you, and then Wayne will come in and we'll talk about the SAFE Act and other protective measures. But I want to understand a little bit about your personal journey because I think it's a remarkable one. You began with a single donkey, and now you have grown a full-service rescue and training facility. What sparked your passion for equine welfare, and how did that first rescue lead to what you have today?
To be honest, it didn't, as much as this whole organization got started off of a donkey, it was something that's it's just always been who I have. It's always been me. I remember being in sixth grade, and they have I don't know if they have it around the country, but it's called the Oral Language Festival. And you have to pick a story, whether it's funny or sad, and you have to basically memorize that and do it like a play. Like you're putting on a show, you're reading it out loud. And where everybody else is doing these funny, hilarious things, I chose an excerpt out of a book about Mustangs shipping to slaughter. So you can imagine I'm a little sixth grader up there talking about horses, Mustangs, and watching the truck go by, and I'm putting it in first person. And so I kind of threw everyone a curveball. I had them crying, and then they didn't understand what was going on. But it's always just been who I have. It's always been me. I can't really say how it happened. I think I was just born needing to save horses, as weird as that sounds. And then it wasn't until Kevin, growing up, I'd always research on AOL, horse slaughter. And I was just obsessed with everything. And I didn't go run around and play basketball outside. I was inside, trying to understand what was going on to my favorite animal, which was devastating to me. And so it was when I rescued Kevin, which was a long period that I was out of researching that topic because of school, high school, college, whatnot, that my sister happened to, tell me oh my gosh, this donkey's going to ship to slaughter. And my brain's we still do that, because it had been 25 years or so. So I was just wow, we still do that. Huh. And so, of course, then I have to, with new technology, grab my cell phone and go down the rabbit hole. And I'm oh my gosh, we're still sending horses to slaughter, except now we're putting them across the border to Mexico. And I was horrified. And so I rescued the donkey, and it changed everything. It was that needed to happen so that somebody would come up to me and say, I've always wanted to start a horse rescue or an animal rescue. And I was Me too. I actually had a book and a club when I was growing up trying to save the lost cats and dogs in the neighborhoods. And so that's what kind of led to founding All Seated in a Barn. And one donkey became, a mom and baby horse, which became more. And then just because of my brain type, I like to understand things. So I kept researching and seeing that there was this big problem out there that nobody even knew about. And it's crazy even today how many people don't know about what's happening to America's equines and the wild horses and the wild burros. And it just kind of like lit something. Sorry, I get really like emotional when I talk about it. It truly lit something in me. And it just has taken over my entire life, sort of speak. And I'm blessed to have like the friends behind me now who are equally as passionate in their own ways. My friend Dawn Olivieri is actually in DC, or she just was meeting with congressmen about the SAFE Act and about things like that. So it's been really neat. Like just the journey itself has been hard and long, but the people you meet are like, the community is getting bigger who want to see this stop and to see like these animals done right by. And that's a beautiful thing. But yeah, it started with a donkey, but it actually started with like a book a long time ago.
Well, it started, I'm sure, even before then, as it became a part of your makeup, and your passion is certainly, it's very affecting. Wayne, let me go to you now, because we alluded to the little known or underknown fact of transport for horse slaughter. Tell us a little bit about what goes on, because it does shock people, I think, to know that the United States still participates in what we would, I think, generally consider a barbaric act.
Well, Joseph, thank you. And Thalia, thank you. What an amazing story. And, I had this in me as a kid as well. It was just built into me. It was hardwired. It's what I call the bond. And when you spoke so movingly, it reminded me that it's just in some of us. But even if it's not in all of us, in the entire American community, we have a moral duty to think about these issues and to think about our responsibilities to animals. And, for me, when I learned in the 1990s that we were shipping, as many as 400,000 horses to slaughter, that we were moving them to slaughter plants in the United States in the 20s and 30s. We had dozens of horse slaughterhouses in the United States. And then we were also shipping them just over the borders in Canada and Mexico, where slaughterhouses are not deep into those countries, away from the U.S. border. Fortunately, Joseph, we were able in 2005 to pass a rider to an annual spending bill. And that annual spending bill for the U.S. Department of Agriculture forbids the agency from spending any money to inspect horses at slaughter plants, combined with state efforts like a ban on horse slaughter in Illinois and a legal opinion that kind of revived the understanding of a Texas law from 1949 that outlaws slaughter of horses in Texas. We cleared the landscape of domestic slaughter plants. But that still left the problem, as you noted in your setup, Joseph, of the live export of horses to Canada and more substantially to Mexico. Now, the good news here, just big picture of life, is that we were slaughtering 400,000 American horses, 35, 38, 40 years ago. Now it's down to about 22,000 if we trust this statistic from USDA. 80% of those 22,000 horses are going to Mexico, the remainder to Canada. And as Thalia probably knows better than anybody, I mean, people in this kill by our world are opportunistically picking up horses. No horses are raised for human consumption. They're race horses, they're pleasure horses, they're show horses, they're working horses, they're pets. And they're repurposed and rerouted, and they're turned into meat, which is then re-exported in the form of the meat to Kazakhstan, Japan, a small number of other countries. In the EU, they don't take many of these horses because they don't know what the horses are injected with in terms of drugs that are prohibited for human consumption in the EU. But I would just turn it back to Thalia. Thalia, what are you seeing in terms of what happens to these horses?
It's so interesting because, and I'm so thankful to be talking to you with all your wealth of knowledge, because being like on ground zero and like seeing it, like, I think the statistic is way off, because when I have to interact with the guys who are working on the Indian reservations and they talk about the tens of thousands of horses they're shipping across the border, and then the statistics are only 20,000, I'm like, something's really not adding up here. But the horses are shipped. I mean, it doesn't matter if they're broken legs, broken necks, pregnant, emaciated. They're getting loaded up onto semi-trucks because there are no options. There's not like grant funding for rescues and sanctuaries readily available. So unfortunately, the rescues can only do what they can do by pounding the pavement. And America's option to this I don't like to call it overpopulation, but I mean, whatever the word is, they have this loophole of like, well, let's just ship them across the border in horrifying conditions on semi-trucks down to Mexico, where in Mexico, the regulations are so different. So the way, like, I was told by a few people that when the horses are picked up in Mexico, like some of the semi-trucks don't even have air holes. So they're just loading them onto like semi-truck haulers, shutting the doors, and they're going, 10 hours down into Mexico in the extreme heat, in the weather, with no food. They haven't gone with food and water for however long it took them to go from, let's say, Bowie, Texas, down to the border. They have no food and water. Then they get there at that holding pen, and then they load onto a truck for God knows how long down with no food and water. And it's horrifying. The horses, they fall down, they die. Like, nobody, it doesn't even make sense to my brain that we actually even allow this to happen. Like, we're so all about like animal welfare, at least the algorithm has my number, that the fact that America's like, oh, this is fine, let's just ship them like this across the border, just make them go away, is like, really? Aren't we better than that? Like, don't they deserve better than that when there's rescues and sanctuaries across the country begging for funding to take care of these animals? And they're like, I'm just going to ship them. It's insane.
Well, it's profit, right? I mean, these people have been doing this. It's what they know. They're making a little bit of money, not much. I mean, Thalia and Joseph, I consider this just a completely negligible economic enterprise. I mean, no one's getting rich off of this.
No.
This is just a small amount of money. It doesn't make any difference to the domestic product of the United States. It's so small. And, whether it's 22,000 or whether it's more, if the tribes are moving larger numbers of animals, and those animals are not being cataloged as they're moved across the border by USDA, well, shame on them for not only doing it, but also misrepresenting themselves by smuggling horses to these other countries. There are horse diseases that are a real problem, and there are no protocols. There's no safety. There's no veterinary attention that these kill buyers and the small number of tribes involved in this trade are engaging in. But the big picture of life is that the horse slaughter proponents, including historically the American Veterinary Medical Association, if you can believe that, they said, well, if we don't have slaughterhouses to dispose of these 2 to 3 or 400,000 horses, then people are going to be cruel to them. They're going to starve them. They're going to neglect them. They're going to turn them loose. Well, we've now seen over time, it went from 400,000 horses to 20,000. That's a reduction of 95% in terms of the number of horses slaughtered. Have we seen, with 95% of the trade eliminated voluntarily or by the domestic ban on slaughter, have we seen this mass surge in cruelty cases? No, there's no evidence of it at all. And the whole thing was just a self-interested argument that these folks made to say, oh, we're doing some good, when really this was the height of selfishness and cruelty just laid bare. So I don't think they have any arguments any longer at all. And Thalia, I mean, are you seeing in California? I mean, are you rescuing animals from all over the West, or is it just California? And what are you seeing in terms of where are you picking up those horses that you're now providing help to?
We get quite a few from California that we take in either through animal control or owner surrenders. And I can tell you they're not in good condition. A lot of people, unfortunately, by the time they go to surrender a horse or circumstances happen, the horses have seen a lot of neglect because the people just didn't know who to reach out for, or their ego or pride was too big. We have a case we're working on right now, which is horrifying, that it's literally a family has a senior horse and the legs are, there will be a day where I post this on social media because people need to know what is not right for an animal. But in Texas, the horses are coming from all over. Like Bowie, Texas is essentially that auction, that export facility is, to me, I call it ground zero. That's where traders come from all across the United States, and they bring horses from all across the United States. And these horses are not in good condition. They are sick. They are diseased. They are broken. They are neglected. And I'm not talking about just 10 or 20. This is like 500 to 800 horses in one weekend every month. And you can't necessarily, as you said, opportunistic is a great word for it. The horse traders and the kill pen itself are all opportunistic. And because there are no regulations, this is the avenue. What people can legally do with them is take them with horrifying injuries, ride them through a sell ring, knowing the general public isn't there because they're bidding online. And if they are there, most of the general public isn't educated enough to know what a horse in pain looks like, or a horse that's not right, or any of the signs that someone that's been around horses like myself for a long time, I can pick them up really fast. And they get them, and then the horses end up with people who can't afford to actually do the vetting to get the horse taken care of. So I see a lot of neglect, and I see a lot of horrifying bad cases regularly.
California outlawed the slaughter of horses for human consumption in 1998 by a ballot initiative. It passed all over the state, not just coastal California, but the Central Valley where Thalia lives, conservative counties, rural counties like Kern County, where her organization is based. And they're not allowed to be shipping horses from California to Mexico under state law.
But there's a huge loophole to that.
Yeah, right. But what the people wanted was for this to stop. They wanted that to stop. And the biggest states in the country all forbid horse slaughter. Texas forbids it with its huge border with Mexico. Illinois forbids it. New York, which is close to Quebec, where one of the major slaughter plants in North America is, New York doesn't allow shipment of horses. So, I mean, the legal progress that we've made is real. Now we have to clinch the case with the Congress and stop all of this madness with horses.
It's so complicated because they need to pass it without a doubt. Like, I feel like this is where America has spoken. We don't want this anymore. Let's pass the SAFE Act. Let's stop the horses from going across the border. But we then also need, and then there's a whole wild Mustang thing. That whole thing's a disaster. But that's where then the government needs to come in and be like, okay, we hear you. Let's pass the SAFE Act, but let's give out the grants and the funding to the rescues who then need to now pick up the pieces and come together to intake all these horses, because otherwise the horses, where are they going to go? Animal control isn't set up to take in horses. They're dogs and cats predominantly. That's where we always find ourselves having to step in.
Thalia, you mentioned a second ago a loophole. I'm not as steeped in this issue as the two of you are. What is that loophole, and can it be closed?
I'm sure there would be a way, but just, you don't have to send the horses to, let's say, I'm just going to say Bowie because it's one of the largest export facilities in the country. But Bowie also operates the second largest horse auction in the country. So the horse traders in California don't have to sell the horses direct to Bowie to ship to slaughter. They can send the horses to Bowie to run through the auction, knowing the house is going to buy that whole lot because they're all crippled, emaciated horses that the general public or horse traders, for that matter, don't want. So the horses still ship.
Kind of like money cleansing almost, right? They kind of mix them in and then they end up indistinguishable from more legitimate purposes.
Yeah, well, it's how they can get away with it. I see the horses come in from all over the country, and they can't, like Wayne was saying, California, you can't send the horses to slaughter. It is illegal, and that's great. but they can still sell the horses to the kill pen.
We'll come back to Wayne in a moment or two as we get to the action part of animal wellness action and talk about the SAFE Act and what can be done to pass it. But I want our listeners to hear a little bit about the life cycle of a rescue at your organization, from identifying a horse at risk, what is entailed generally with rehabilitation, and then what's the long-term outcome you always try to achieve?
Yeah, so every rescue has what they focus on. I am a broad spectrum. For me, it's if they're going to be riding in a semi-truck down to the slaughter plant with a broken leg, that's not okay by me. I will fundraise for that horse specifically to have the x-rays and do my due diligence and humanely euthanize the horse. But then there's also like horses that just need to retire that are seniors and they just need a soft landing. Most of America doesn't want that either. They want riding horses. So we are all over the map. I take in riding horses, senior horses, broken horses, wild horses, young horses, bucking horses, x-race horses, literally the whole gamut. And everyone, I mean, the average length of horses with us that is not crippled and needs to be humanely put down is 6 to 8 months, because we do that much rehab and they need that much rehab. A lot of these horses have not got the proper care as far as nutrition goes, as far as farrier work, and you don't know how long they were in the pipeline going from auction to horse trader and around that circle. So there's a lot of retraining. You know, people, they love their horses, but they didn't ride them for 2 years. So now these horses need to go through a proper training session in order to be, every horse of ours, if we're going to adopt them out, we need them to be safe for the general public, because the general public is who is looking to adopt a horse. And so they stay with us for that long. But then we have the horses that are simply what I deem unfit to be riding horses. And I am very strict on that. And those horses stay with us forever, unless the right therapy program or home comes along that can honor that long-term commitment to that horse. Because as much as people want to say, we won't ever ride the horse, they're going to have grandkids that come over at some point that want to ride the horse. And then that's where they're like, oh, okay, let's put you up on the horse. So I'm just a lot more cautious with that. But I would say that would be kind of the time frame is 6 to 8 months. But ultimately, that's why I also say we're a sanctuary too, because, you know, we have hundreds of horses that have nowhere to go. So they call us home.
And is that how many horses you have right now, in the hundreds?
We have over 500.
Wow. All right. Very, very good. What injuries do you see or illnesses most commonly?
For illnesses, we see strangles most common, and EPM, which is a parasite that gets in and wreaks havoc on their nervous systems. And then as far as physical ailments, we see a lot of leg issues and hoof issues.
Right. And then I'm sure it goes to extremes one way or the other, but do you have a sense for what average it costs you to take a horse from, I guess, reception to discharge?
Between 5,000 and 8,000.
Okay, per horse. All right, so quite a bit of financial need there. Let's take a second and tell listeners where they can go to learn more about this work, and if they want to participate in some way, do that. Not that Wayne would appreciate me necessarily sending potential donors to other.
I do appreciate it, Joseph. Thalia is doing great work. No, I totally support what
they can
she's doing.
I always encourage people just to go take a look at our social media platforms, our YouTube. We have a documentary team that goes with us every single month for a week, and we release a YouTube docu-series showing what's going on. The best way is just to go visually, like, learn and see where the rabbit hole takes you. But I do my best to put enough educational content out there, from the ones where you just want to look away to the happy before and afters, just to really catch people's attention so that they can see, wow, this really goes on, and hopefully want to keep digging a little bit more, even if it's not to our rescue and perhaps they feel drawn to someone else. That's fine, in my opinion, because a horse saved is a horse saved, even if it's not through us.
You're listening to the Animal Wellness Podcast. We'll be right back after this quick word from our sponsor.
Animal Wellness Action depends on countless people like you to support our fight for animals. Join us today by donating to further our campaigns to spare countless animals from cruel and needless pharmaceutical tests. Put an end to animal fighting. Liberate farm animals from extreme confinement and so many others. Become a donor at any amount. Visit animalwellnessaction.org/donate to join our fight against animal cruelty of all kinds. Again, that's animalwellnessaction.org/donate. Thank you.
Now, back to the Animal Wellness Podcast.
Tell listeners a little bit about the ecosystem of horse sanctuaries and rescues. You're at 500. You're probably one of the biggest in the country, right? Would you think?
Yeah, I think we're the second biggest. There's a bigger one on the East Coast that focuses more on horses going to Canada for slaughter, but definitely the biggest outside of that.
Right. I've got a friend who operates Liberty Sanctuary in Utah, and I know a lot of other horse sanctuaries. Any sense of how many people are doing the work, self-sacrificing work that you're doing?
It's got to be hundreds because, I follow a lot of rescues, or I try to follow as many as I can. And then I mentor quite a few rescues. But it's got to be hundreds, especially if you bring in like the wild horse sanctuaries and donkey sanctuaries and other more specific niches. Definitely.
It's an incredible network. And what I really have tried to emphasize too in talking to lawmakers is that private citizens are dealing with the messes that other people create. There are people who get a horse and they don't understand what kind of commitment it requires to maintain him or her or a small herd of horses. And then they foist that responsibility on nonprofit organizations like Thalia's, who then has to raise money every single day because horses are enormously expensive. The feed, because these are large-bodied animals weighing over 1,000 pounds. The veterinary care is expensive. The land is expensive because they need space to move. This is a transferring of responsibility to people who were not part of the solution. And, whereas Thalia sees a horse in distress as a personal responsibility, a kill buyer sees that as an economic opportunity. And that is the moral difference between her and these other hundreds of horse rescues that operate in the country, and these predatory people who victimize these horses for chump change. And then, you have others in our society who are producing more horses for no good reason, and they're just dumping this responsibility on others. It really infuriates me.
Yeah, there's a lot of ranchers who quite literally just breed horses, but they get intermixed with the Mustangs and whatnot, and then they just dump the babies. They'll ring them in, and then they just dump the babies on these kill pens to these horse traders. It's ridiculous.
I want to ask one more question of you, Thalia, before we wrap up with the conversation on how we can get the SAFE Act into law. And that is what I think is an amazing outgrowth of your work. And that you help veterans now. You're bringing in at-risk youth, women in recovery, and you're merging them with your work for horses. Talk about that. What do you do, and why are you doing it, and what good is coming of it?
Well, who doesn't love to be around a horse? And for me, it's always been, again, back to that. What do you want to do with your life? My grand vision is horses heal us, but we also heal them. So it's been extremely important to me that through their healing process and their healing journey with us, that we can bring in different aspects of our community and people who need it to reap the healing that these horses have to offer. But in return, they're going to heal our horses who need to learn trust and learn that it's okay and they're safe and they're going to be, they're going to get back to the straight and narrow. So I feel like it's something actually my friends and I talk about a lot, is that a huge trend that you're seeing are people reaching out and using animals for therapy, especially horses. And our hope is that it'll become such in demand, which it already is. In our town, we have one big place called Mare, and they're fully booked out for a year out. You can't get in to do therapy work with their horses. So now we have the other people coming to us to utilize our program, because it is becoming more high in demand. They want their kids to actively go be around the horses, and the veterans to be around the horses. And we have women who come out with such bad anxiety that within a year working with the horses, they start their own nonprofit healing centers for horses that they then take in. And I think it'll only grow. It's only going to grow. I think people want that. They don't want to go sit with a therapist. They want to go sit with a horse.
All right. Very good. Very inspiring. And we've had Monty Roberts on the show, who is a famous horseman who does similar work. And our California state director takes dogs into prisons and helps heal prisoners and some of their underlying issues with animals as well. And it certainly, as so many of our shows do, reminds me of the tagline for Animal Wellness Action and its sister Center for a Humane Economy, that helping animals does indeed help us all, and sometimes very directly, as you just described that. Wayne, the SAFE Act, what's the status? What's its chances? And what can we do to help shepherd it into law?
Well, the House and Senate have bills. Lindsey Graham and of South Carolina, a Republican, and Ben Ray Lujan, a Democrat of New Mexico, who's on the Agriculture Committee, have the Senate bill. It's got good bipartisan support, and I believe well more than 60 or even 70 votes in support in the Senate should that issue come up for a vote. In the House, Vern Buchanan, a Florida Republican, and Jan Schakowsky, a Democrat of Illinois, have that bill. It's H.R. 1661. It has 224 co-sponsors. 218 is a majority of the House. So we have 224 people who publicly align themselves with the bill, and that is just a large percentage of the support in the House, but not the full amount of support. My guess is if we had a vote in the House on this issue, we'd get at least 375 House members out of the 435 who would vote yes. So support is not the issue. The issue is process and actually getting the bill to a vote. The chairs of the agriculture committees in the House, Glenn Thompson of Pennsylvania and John Bozeman of Arkansas, have not demonstrated at this point any active support for the SAFE Act. They could bring up this bill independently and push for a vote on the House and Senate floor. They have not done so. The Farm Bill may be coming up in this Congress. That's typically an every 5-year measure that deals with broad agriculture policy, and animal welfare is part of that because the U.S. Department of Agriculture manages the Animal Welfare Act, and the SAFE Act amends the Animal Welfare Act to basically forbid domestic slaughter as well as live export of horses and burros and other equines. So we're hoping that the House Farm Bill is considered by the committee at the end of February or in March. And at that point, we would want to have the SAFE Act offered as an amendment in committee to then get included in the bill. And then as that bill moves to the floor and hopefully to the other chamber, it would be included. We'll see. We have been stymied time and again, not because we don't have the votes, but because of these process-related issues. So I think it's really important for everyone to call your U.S. senators and your U.S. rep. I typically hear from offices that opposition to horse slaughter, as well as opposition to roundups of wild horses and burros, are some of the most popular subjects for their constituents. They often get more constituent calls and email on those two topics and any other topic, even more than Social Security or Greenland or Ukraine or, taxes. So there's a lot of support, but we can't count on past performance by advocates. We have to constantly be agitating. We have to inundate these offices and we have to invite them. One friend of mine who runs the Liberty Sanctuary in Utah, she invited her congressman to come to her sanctuary, and he really learned a lot. And I think he's going to be a big supporter of the SAFE Act. And if every horse rescue and sanctuary invited their local lawmakers, their federal lawmakers, to come out to the facility, I think that would be incredible education. We have to raise our voices. And obviously Thalia has done that. You've got an amazing social media following. You're spreading that word. And I hope your followers see this broadcast and then share it with people all across the country, because 99 out of 100 people are with us on this issue.
Dawn and I were talking about how we want to plan a ride actually from Mexico to Washington, D.C. the end of this year. And she does a lot of speaking with Bobby Kahn, who's running for Congress in Nevada, but about how we would do this ride into D.C. to get support behind the SAFE Act and get education out there. But invite rescues and sanctuaries and horse owners to join us as we get closer. So it would just be this beautiful sound of hooves coming into Washington, D.C. And hopefully through the news and through media and social media, it would get even more attention and more awareness. And I don't know how you would ignore that.
Yeah, I hope you let us know when you do that and take advantage of this show and some of our other channels to help publicize that.
Question, if I can. Do
Sure.
you know why the guy in Montana and New York, why they don't, like, did they give a response and why they don't want to help support this? Is there like a reason?
You're talking about the chairs of the Agriculture Committee?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the guy in Pennsylvania, Glenn Thompson, and then Arkansas, John Bozeman, I think that they hear a lot from the cattlemen, and then there have been communications from some of the tribes, a few of the tribes, who say that we need to get rid of these horses and this is a way for us to do it. So I think these entities, the cattlemen, I think this is just a long-standing position, and they have not reconsidered it in light of the new facts and how slaughter has collapsed in some ways from 400,000 to 22,000. But I think, again, it's just simple selfishness. If someone has an old ranch horse, if they can sell that horse for $200 to a kill buyer rather than pay $200 to have the animal euthanized and then buried, they want to pocket that money. And that selfishness in that really inconsequential issue in their lives in terms of, if you have an animal that has been working for you, you have a responsibility to close that situation out and to handle it responsibly, not to pawn the animal off. We don't, accept the idea that if you have a working dog on the ranch, well, we're going to then, as the animal's reaching, later stages of life or is no longer useful to you, you're going to sell that to a kill buyer for dogs and have that dog slaughtered and then, sent overseas for somebody to consume 8,000 miles away. It's ridiculous logic. And these groups don't have any leg to stand on, yet they persist, and lawmakers are blindly obedient to them. They're not thinking through the issues. And I shouldn't say they, because so many have. That's why we have 70, 80% of Congress supporting this. But a small number of lawmakers are just reflexively listening to groups and entities that they have some historical association with or that they get money from, when really they don't have much of a basis for their argument at all.
Right. And I'm genuinely asking because obviously this is your path and I appreciate that. And I know that the time is of the essence. I'm curious, why haven't horses been designated as domestic animals like dogs and cats? I know back in the day, horses were livestock. We used them, whatever. But now horses are not what they were when they were first categorized as livestock. Now they are more domestic pets and companions.
Well, the Congress doesn't have that. Those are not definitions in the law. That's just kind of popular understanding. And dogs and cats are domesticated animals, but more broadly, they're viewed as pets and companions. Horses historically did have a role in agriculture, and we did have some slaughter. As I mentioned earlier, we had dozens of slaughter plants in the early part of the 20th century. So they're evolving in terms of what public perceptions are. And this issue is evolving, right? In the last 35 years, to go from 400,000 to 20,000 really reflects a cultural change. And now the law must follow that cultural change and close this out, just like we're just about to end greyhound racing in America. We had 60 greyhound tracks a generation ago. Now we have 2. So both of these issues are on a definite trajectory But what we need to do as advocates is be the catalyst for the conclusion, the humane conclusion of this process. And that's why, but we're always going to have a need for rescues like yours, because even if we solve the slaughter problem, we're still going to have people who make the wrong decisions about acquiring animal, who don't have the resources to care for them, or who are just delinquent or negligent or even cruel. And that's why your work is so important. And I thank you so much for it.
Thank you for listening to the Animal Wellness Podcast. Please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and follow Animal Wellness Action on Facebook, X, Instagram, and LinkedIn. To stay current with all of our news and information and to take action to help animals, sign up at animalwellnessaction.org. Until next time, remember, helping animals helps us all.